All right, how's everyone doing? I am Rich Celenza. Thanks for checking out my channel. So what I want to get into today is kind of just telling people that sometimes it just takes one thing regarding an accessory or a piece of clothing or something related to their identity to really start building up confidence. And I don't think a lot of people realize this. I think a lot of people, when they want to build confidence or they want to start making changes in their life, they look at something very, huge. And if you know anything about me, I kind of talk about working from the outside in, not the inside out. I know a lot of people, when you hear, them talking about many things, especially if it's confidence related, it's a mindset and you got to start believing all these things, which you do. I'm not saying you don't. But a lot of times also, it can just be one thing that can kind of start things rolling. And if you listen to any of my other videos, a lot of times I just talk about the one thing. For instance, a lot of people I know come up to me and they say, I want to lose 20, 30 pounds. And I tell them, why don't you start with one? And they look at me like I'm an asshole. But I'm being very serious. Start with one, and then let's lose another one. Then let's look at it from that perspective, not looking at a monumental task where I have to lose 30 pounds in a certain amount of time, or I have to change up my diet. I have to make all these different changes, I guess you could say. Let's start very small. And I think too, when it comes to identity and building confidence, start small. I'm telling you, it goes such a long way. I really learned this when I was younger, actually. I would college, a Catholic prep school, and I did summer schools in Florida. You want to talk about a two totally different culture. It was unbelievable. In my school, the prep school, it was really, we had a dress code. Obviously, we had to wear dress shirts, dress pants, dress shoes, dress coats, sometimes ties. I think after I left, they made it that you had to always wear a tie. But you just had to dress a certain way, and dressing that way, really did have an impact on a lot of us students, the way we had to act, the way we looked, the way we presented ourselves. And I realized that a lot when I would go to other schools throughout the state, because I played a lot of sports. So when, a lot of times we would go to tournaments or just go to events or whatever, we were dressed a certain way. They weren't. And you can kind of tell the behavior was a little different, not just because we were a prep school or we're arrogant assholes or whatever. But back to Florida now, in the summer school, I'm going in there in shorts, tank tops. My whole disposition changed, right? And I felt different. I felt like I was living two kind of different lives. One in Florida was definitely loosey-goosey. I mean, a lot of guys were even coming, and I'm talking in the 80s, they'd come in sandals. Some would even walk around barefoot. We had a lot of skaters, surfers, that lifestyle, right? Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit too, when I was making films. I knew, really, for me, what would help my actors, I think, more than anything. They learn their lines. They know what the character is. They know what they're supposed to be. And what I did a lot within my films was I took a lot of actors, some professional actors, and then I took a lot that weren't, because I wanted to blend them to give a very realistic approach. I didn't want it to just be all actors, because I'd hate to say it, the type of movies I was making, it just didn't work in Chicago with all these type of actors. And then if I used only guys that weren't actors, they weren't trained, and that was a fiasco too. They wouldn't, be able to necessarily be able to memorize their lines or be able to hit their marks all the time. So I really wanted to blend that, and I think a lot of filmmakers do this, to give you that realistic approach, because that's what I was kind of looking for. And, again, back to the one thing, it was very small things I would give each one of my lead characters. I'll just give it, for instance, I say I had a detective, or I had a criminal, for instance, whatever the case may be. I'll start with the detective, and they got the badge and the gun holster and all that stuff. I would give them a real gun. Obviously, it would be empty, but I would give them a real gun, and they would look at me. And I'm like, this is, just be careful, whatever. But there's no guns. Believe me, this was all safe. But when I gave him that real gun, I can tell there was a click in him to say, holy shit, now I kind of legit feel like this isn't some plastic piece of shit gun. Even with my criminal type dudes, even some were actually criminals that were in my films, some were not. Some broke the law. Nonetheless, I had silencers made, right, for the film, because this was an action type film. But I made them look real. And when we'd use them, they'd actually ask me, is this real? What is it? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, don't worry about it. But again, when I would give them certain things, you can see it just started to make them believe in themselves on a whole nother level. And, I think with a lot of people, if you start small again, if you want to start building, more confidence, or you just want to start heading in a different direction with your identity, you don't have to go extreme. And I talk a lot about this in my book, Wingman, and even my Mastering Self-Confidence program with a lot of men especially. They think all of a sudden they want to, become something, and then they go change their whole identity a lot of times. And then before you know it, after a certain amount of time, they're not happy with that identity. They want to kind of maybe go back to their other one, or they're then just confused. And you can do whatever the hell you want to do. But I'm just telling you, the slower maybe you evolve into whatever you want to evolve into, I think the easier the transition, and it gives you time to really think about, what you're becoming. A lot of guys all of a sudden I know, especially musicians, they're one way, then all of a sudden they decide they're going to start playing the guitar, they want to start going on tour, they want to be a rock star, I guess, and all of a sudden they change their wardrobe, change their hair, do all these type of things. I'm not saying you can't do that, but sometimes it does make you look a little whack. But then say you don't become these things, or you do all those changes, and then you're like, what the hell am I doing? Why did I do this? And now I got to go back. And like I was just saying earlier, like what is my true identity? But back to starting with just one. I think a lot of people, especially men, just should consider very small again. I think a lot of times shoes or even boots is huge. If you're looking to just build up some confidence, I'm telling you, now if you live in Florida and places you can't wear boots, I get it, but just a badass pair of shoes or boots again. Something every time you put them on, you just feel different. And it can just start something going where you just, it's sometimes hard to explain, but just by walking around in a certain type of shoe, and this can go for clothing or accessories, makes you feel different. It doesn't always have to be huge. A lot of times I talk about wardrobe. So yeah, of course, if you put on a suit or a tuxedo, you're going to feel a different way. But how much are you wearing, that type of outfit? Even a lot of coats. You may get a lot out of your coat. But, I used to wear, and I still do, I love wearing leather coats. So I love wearing coats. So when I'll admit it, when I put that leather coat on, it gives me a different type of posture, kind of an attitude. It sounds wacky, but it keeps me warm, but it's kind of a rugged, thing that I walk around with. Now I can't wear that all the time, but I can assure you, if I put on a different type of windbreaker or something like I'm wearing right now, I'm not even thinking about it, more fitness orientated, I feel different. And, back to accessories too, it could be just something like a watch, right? It could be a necklace. It could be a ring. It can be whatever, but you kind of start with something. And sometimes too, I think everybody thinks like I'm all about the show, right? That's not what it's about a lot of times. These are just little things that I learned over the years that I believe can help people, especially when it comes to confidence or just working on their identity and maybe breaking out from the norm. Because I do think there's tons of people out there that do want to change their identity. They do. They may not like the way they look, heavy, too thin. They may not like their wardrobe. They may not like their hairstyle. They just may not like their taste in clothes, or they just may not like how they look in general. And I get it. A lot of people are like this, but nobody kind of really wants to sometimes address the elephant in the room and saying, hey, the reason you may, feel this way is because you don't want to change. And I talk about it all the time. Not everybody, a lot of people want to change, but no one wants to make changes. And when I do these videos, it's not about telling you how to dress. That I can assure you. But I do want to kind of bring something to people's attention when it comes to their identity that, no one is truly locked into an identity unless you want to be. Now, of course, if you work somewhere and you have to wear a uniform, that's different. You go to school somewhere, maybe there's, a wardrobe, that you have to wear, a certain, whatever it is. I'm talking about your own personal identity. At least in North America, you kind of can dress the way you want on your free time. I'm not telling you to run around naked, nothing crazy, but if you really want to start making changes to your wardrobe or your accessories or whatever, you can do it. I can assure you. And I know there's tons of people out there that want to do it, that are afraid to do it. And I'm here to tell you, you can dress really any way you want, as long as it's appropriate. I mean, let's not get nuts here. I wouldn't go really nuts. I'm just not that type of person. But again, depending on what you do for a living or what you just, the lifestyle you lead, go lead it. Dress the way you want. And, you know, a lot of times too, when I was living in California for like 6 years, you know, a lot of us get wrapped up too with, you know, depending on what age you are, you have to dress a certain way. And I understand that to a certain point. I get it. I can't walk around dressing like a 18-year-older. But what I found interesting in California is like these, you know, you have skaters there obviously and surfers, and they're in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s. And they still kind of dress like that, and they can pull it off. And I was amazed at that. You know, really, it's back to no matter how you want to dress or how you want people to perceive you, I do think it comes down to confidence again. You can dress really any way you want. You just got to be able to pull it off. Now, when I say pull it off, as far as me thinking how someone should pull something off and how somebody else may be different. But I was really shocked, like I was saying, when you see guys that are 50 years old still skating, again, wearing Vans or wearing all these, you know, skater clothes or even surfers. I thought they looked badass. And I would have been, if I never lived in California, I would have probably, and believe me, I come from Chicago, but I've lived in Florida. I was always used to guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s, kind of in the Tommy Bahama kick, like more, you know, that type of wardrobe. Even though there are surfers in Florida, I'm not going to say, and skaters and all that too, but I just didn't see as much of it. But it was an eye-opener to say, hey, wear what you feel, you know, you're most comfortable in too, I should say. Now, if you're going to a wedding or doing, obviously don't dress like a jagoff. I'm not saying that. But maybe you just sometimes don't feel comfortable in your own skin because of maybe the way you're dressing. I know that sounds crazy. Like you may be like, no, it's because the way I think and the way I grew up and all this other shit. It may not be that complicated. Life sometimes is like, you know, it's very simple. And again, if you're not wearing what you want to wear, you're going to be uncomfortable. If you're not the weight maybe you want to be, you're going to be uncomfortable, right? It's just a reality. So the quicker we address these things, I think the better off you're going to be. But I will say too, be realistic. A lot of times people do think they're going to lose X amount of weight and look and feel great or look a certain way, and it doesn't happen. That's life. Same with gaining muscle or getting bigger. A lot of guys think they're going to go to the gym for X amount of months or years and eat and do all these, and they're going to all of a sudden look like this professional bodybuilder or whatever, and it doesn't happen. At least you went for it. I'm just telling you. And you know what? At the end of the day, you're probably going to look and feel a lot better than if you never went for it in the first place. So anyways, just start with one, like I said. Something very small. I would start with shoes, like I said. And if you've been watching any of my videos, I'm trying to help men really live incredible lives affordably. And, you know, just starting simple too with t-shirts, jean jackets, or leather coats, or just a badass pair of jeans, back to shoes, a bracelet, whatever. Simplicity sometimes is the key to happiness. You don't have to always wear a $5,000 three-piece suit. You don't always have to have, you know, all these extravagant things. You may not realize it, but less may be more for you as well. All right? All right, I'm going to leave it at that. If you get a chance, check out my podcast, The Rich Celenza Show. That's all over the joint lately. I've been getting a lot of feedback from that, which has been awesome. This is kind of like a podcast to a certain degree. Very similar to what I do on my podcast. But on my podcast, I also have guests and things of that nature. But I'm also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you want to know more about my program, it's masteringselfconfidence.com. My book is Wingman. And if you want to just hit me up, leave a comment. If you hit me up personally, I'll send you my book. I truly love helping people, and it's for men, that book. And I also actually have a book from, if you want to break into the modeling industry, it's for females. I don't know how many females are listening to me anymore. Looks like my demographics 80% male. A lot of younger dudes, which is cool, but just hit me up. I'll, if I can help you, I'll help you. So I'm going to just wrap it up there. All right, take care, and if you get a chance, subscribe.